It's finally here. The Avengers by Jonathan Hickman Omnibus Volume 1 Advance Overview. This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. Not sure why I always say welcome back, even though you've only been gone for about a second. Yeah, welcome back. You've been gone for like 5 days. Anyway, what we have here is the latest printing of Avengers by Jonathan Hickman Omnibus, or what some of us have dubbed the Hickvengers Era Volume 1. Before going any further, though, a big thank you to David Gabriel and all the folks at Marvel for sending us an advance copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on February 7th or 8th, depending on where you get your books. And when I said at the beginning it is finally here, this reprint, it's the one that you all voted for. It was one that was supposed to come out last year, and it kept just slipping and slipping into the year, and finally it is coming out in February. Now, this is the latest printing and has been previously printed before, but that came and went. People bought up this particular book because of that name, really. I mean, Jonathan Hickman just left his huge impact at Marvel Comics with Secret Warriors, Fantastic Four, S.H.I.E.L.D., and of course, lately, the House and Powers of X. But this is the one that leads directly into the Secret Wars, and I'll talk a little bit about that reading order. But the first thing I want to say is that this is the direct market cover here by Arthur Adams. On the left-hand side is the standard edition cover they're going to be using, and that one is by Dustin Weaver, and this is my original printing right here, or the old printing, and then the new printing, so I will be doing a comparison. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and do a comparison right now as far as what it looks like from that angle right there. So you see that they've changed the color blue to black in the new printing, and that angle right there with the Black Panther and the members of the new Avengers. So it looks like it is the exact same piece of art in the back. The retail price being $125. The ISBN is a lot smaller. This is actually bigger in the original printing, all the font, even this a little bit more than that. Truly massive in scope, and oh my gosh, that is the way that he writes. Now, one thing, since I already have my advanced copy of Volume 2, the new printing, and it doesn't come out till May, I did want to show what this looks like together. Alright, so here is what the original printing looks like compared to the new printing. Again, Volume 2, I believe, as of this video, is due out in May. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and of course, that is the lining up of the A for Avengers there. This is the original printing, which, yeah, that's really cool. And over here, it's like, oh, like half an A. But over here is kind of like the full A, and it's not like any of it made it on the cover here. Now, you know, this is my copy. I don't know if all copies will be like that, but it seems like they probably will be more than likely, just because this is a finished product from the printer. So I'm not sure, but I did want to make people aware of what that looks like, since spines have become a big issue with the type of spines that Marvel and DC uses, or when they change them. But I did want to make you aware that that A is not going to look like this A. Maybe this is why sometimes the big two companies don't do a lot of collected covers. You know, I'm not going to speculate as to what happened, but if I were to guess, I assume the same file from here went to the printer, and now they're using a different printer, which we will look at here in a little bit. But again, this volume coming out in May, as of this video. Let's take a look underneath the dust jacket. So, underneath the original printing and the new printing, it looks like the exact same image. This one here being a little bit darker, a little bit more purplish in tone, if you will. White spine with absolutely nothing. I feel like Jonathan Hickman himself designed this, because that's like a very Hickman thing to do. It's just the way that he likes his books. And all the way in the back, the eye right there from the original printer. This was printed at the Donley printer. And the eye right there from the new printing, printed at the iMac printer. Okay, we're going to open this book up. If you want to jump to the comparison, where there's really not going to be any spoilers between the two books, I'm putting timestamps in the description of the video, because that's what I'm doing now, to keep people away from spoilers, people that don't want to even look at any of the pictures. Now, if you don't care about minor spoilers or the setup of this book without going into big major spoilers and want to look at the inside of the book, by all means, keep watching the video. But you want to be surprised completely because you've been doing a huge readathon of Jonathan Hickman's books, then by all means, jump ahead to where I'm doing the comparison. But before that, my suggested reading for this, before jumping into this, if you're reading all the Hickman universe stuff, is read his Shields, the Architects of Shields miniseries. It's available in deluxe editions. There's 2 deluxe editions of those. Then jump into the Secret Warriors, which is being reprinted later this year. Then his Fantastic Four, and that's available in omnibus format. And do not forget his Ultimates and Ultimate Thor miniseries. So that is available, I believe, only in trade paperback and in standard size hardcover. It was never available in deluxe, but who knows, maybe one day. And then jump into this, because believe it or not, every story leads into one thing or another. House and Powers of X comes at a later time, and all of this leads directly after Volume 2 into Secret Wars 2015, not the classic Secret Wars. Alright, now that I gave you that little bit of history lesson, let's jump into the book. Alright, let's crack this open. We have some white end paper, and I mentioned it's like Jonathan Hickman himself designed the outside of the book. He really loves these white pages, like throughout his Fantastic Four, throughout the pages of his Secret Warriors, and in here. In House and Powers of X, it always felt like somebody else helped design the book. So, here's your credits right here. Jonathan Hickman with Nick Spencer, co-writing Avengers 14 through 17. Here are your artists, and he worked with some wonderful talent in here. Steve Epting, Adam Kubert, Jeromo Pena, Dustin Weaver, Mike Deodato Jr., Stefano Caselli, Jim Chung, Lionel Francis Yu, just to name a few. Previously in Avengers, and it kicks right off with Earth's Mightiest Heroes, much like the way that he does the House and Powers of X or the Dawn of X era. He starts using symbols, which just is a very iconic thing for Jonathan Hickman to do, especially if you've read his independent stuff. And then he gives you a roster of who you're going to find through these pages. And as one thing you could probably tell, it's like, hey, those characters sound like the Avengers from the movies. And sure enough, yeah, because this is 2012 when this book was published. So it kicks off with Avengers #1, this whole idea of Avengers World, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But this collects Avengers, the 2012 series, or what is known as the Marvel Now era of Marvel Comics. So it's when they wanted to do a fresh start on all these books. So this is after the events of Bendis, his run on New Avengers, and of course Dark Avengers and Mighty Avengers, and all gets wrapped up into one. But anyway, this collects Avengers 1 through 23, New Avengers 1 through 12, and then Free Comic Book Day 2013, the Infinity, and then the Infinity miniseries, which is 1 through 6, Infinity Against the Tide, Infinite Comics 1 and 2, Astonishing Tales, Mojo World 1 through 6, which I'm so glad they kept that all the way in the back, and then material from Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu #1. While I'm grateful that they collected those early stories of Astonishing Tales, which I think came out in 2008, it would have interrupted the flow of the story, whether you started at the beginning, or started it in the middle, or mapped it in the middle, rather. Because when you go from here to the very first page of Previously in Avengers, there was nothing, followed by everything. Holy crap, that is epic. This is an epic story. I will warn you, though, if you've never read a Hickman story, it's going to feel dense as hell. And I'll explain why in a little bit. This book has 1,192 pages, again, retailing for $125. Now, when I meant dense, it's dense in the way that he writes, but he writes a lot of his stories like that. He throws you into the middle of what is to become madness. But don't feel lost even though you're new to Avengers, because the rest of us were lost too. And that's okay. Everything is explained as the story progresses. So we're introduced to these particular characters that are on Mars. Now, of course, it kicks off with Captain America having a nightmare, and looking up from his nightmare, he sees Black Panther, Black Bolt, Namor, and Mr. Fantastic. And Tony's like, what's wrong? What's going on, Steve? He's like, I've been having these weird dreams. And he's like, all right, well, look, come with me. Tony's got an idea about what to do with the Avengers. And then a month later, on Mars, because that's just the way that Jonathan Hickman writes these particular stories, and if you're not familiar with that, it does jump around a little bit with timelines. Sometimes you're looking at the past, sometimes you're looking at the present, and then sometimes you're looking at the future. And luckily, there's little captions like this to tell you where you are. Sometimes, not every time. But that's just something he does. He doesn't tell stories usually in chronological order sometimes. And here we meet these group of characters. We have Ex Nihilo right here, who's hanging out on Mars with this particular character that is coming out of this kind of like a seed. Very familiar to what happens in the world of House and Powers of X. He loves plants, and that is Abyss. But we also have a third party there. This is Aleph, this robotic character right there. Now, these are newer characters to the Marvel Universe. This Abyss has nothing to do with the Abyss from Age of Apocalypse, if you will. And everything will be explained. Now, on the way to Mars, they detect that apes are incoming. So you have Captain America, Tony Stark right there, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and then Bruce Banner in the back. And this is pretty much your lineup of the Avengers movie, and perhaps that's why they... I don't know if this was Jonathan Hickman's idea or the editor's idea, but whatever, it works. Because you see the Hulk just rampaging out there, and, you know, he's not Smart Hulk during this time. He's split up between Bruce Banner and Hulk, so he's a little bit more savage and a little more brutal, but it's also stronger. And he's being controlled, fights his own Avenger friends, and here we have this huge fight. Then we wake up 3 days later with Captain America waking up all kinds of beat up from this battle. So what he does, and again later on it is thoroughly explained how this happens, he is building a team of backup Avengers. Now we've seen that before, right? Like we've seen a group of superheroes get captured by plants and animals of this specific island, and a new group of X-Men are summoned to go and help those heroes out that are captured. Awesome. I'm a big fan of the second Genesis, so I'm glad that they decided to go that route, and it's a really unique way of bringing in a second team. We've seen it happen time and time again, whether in Marvel Comics or Justice League or DC Comics. I love the idea of a backup team. But on his team, he doesn't really have a lot of Avengers that people are like, oh yeah, totally an Avenger. Like, it wasn't until Bendis' time on Avengers that we saw Spider-Man and Wolverine really hang out with the Avengers. But here we have Hyperion, and we've seen Hyperion. I got so excited when I saw the first issue. I was like, oh my gosh, he's adding Hyperion to the team. As a big fan of Mark Gruenwald's Squadron Supreme, I was like, oh my gosh, how did he get out of that universe? What's going to happen? I'll explain a little bit about who that is here. This character with that symbol right there that I don't really want to get into that much because that's a little bit of a spoiler if you don't know that symbol. But that symbol means a lot to people that have been reading comics for a while. And it's all explained through here. I promise what this character is. Here we have a character that looks like one of the Imperial Guard Smasher, if you will. But it's the female version of Smasher, but there have been many Smashers. I think that all started with Grant Morrison's idea of like, oh yeah, somebody else will take the mantle of Smasher. That was during the pages of New X-Men. We have Captain Marvel back there. As I said, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Cannonball, yes! And I think when I first read this, I'm like, who is that? Is that Sunspot? Oh my gosh, Cannonball and Sunspot made it to the Avengers. Awesome. There is Shang-Chi right there, Falcon, and this guy right here, who I immediately recognized because I had read The Secret Warriors, and that is Manifold. Relations to the character of Gateway from the X-Men, so he can teleport. He has this teleporting power ability. So this is his new Avengers that are summoned to go and help out the Avengers that are captured on Mars by these three characters. And the idea came from a flashback, again, jumping back and forth with the timeline is the way that he writes these stories. Epic in scale for sure, but very dense, and it's okay to be lost at first. Because the way that he writes, it's very, you know, some people could say pretentious, if you will. He expects you to catch up, to do your own research, to have an idea what's going on exactly. And I don't really see that as pretentious. I see that a lot with Grant Morrison's writing and Kieran Gillen's writing. I just think it's okay to throw people into the middle of madness and them get lost, and then you tell the story as it goes on naturally, and people will catch up. That's what happens here. You're thrown into a little bit of confusion, and then through a series of flashbacks and flash forward sometimes, like I said, you get to learn exactly what happened. So here he's recruiting a team, or him and Tony are recruiting a team. They offer Wolverine beer, which is awesome. They offer Spider-Man money. So they're going around and just recruiting a Avengers world. Here is Oh, I love this scene right here with Sam and Roberto da Costa. I'm so glad that he was able to use them. Because I remember when Sam graduated to become an X-Men, I was so happy. I was like, okay, no longer a New Mutant. Now my guy is an X-Men. So that's what the Avengers storyline is. It's this huge story where these characters are going up to Mars to fight off these group of 3 newer characters that I don't really want to call villains. Meanwhile, in the pages of New Avengers, he takes the idea of the Illuminati, which was created by Brian Michael Bendis, in the pages of New Avengers, and then, of course, expanded in the pages of the Illuminati miniseries. And he decides to add a couple of characters in here, replace a couple of characters, because mainly due to the times this was written, they were unavailable, I will say that. And that's what this is. That's what New Avengers becomes. It becomes an Illuminati title, where these group of characters right here, you have Black Bolt, Namor, Reed Richards, Iron Man, Captain America. So that's what New Avengers is, this group of Illuminati that are formed together because they all hold one of the Infinity Stones right here, or the Infinity Gems, rather, as they're called in the Marvel Comics universe. And they're trying to prevent something big from happening. And this something big is called the Incursion. And it's something that's going to destroy worlds. It's when two universes rather, are about to collide with each other, and one universe is going to be destroyed. That idea started happening early on in the pages of New Avengers. So it's up to the Illuminati to figure out how to stop it from happening. Again, being a secret group that nobody really knows about. Now, you may wonder, well, how is Tony Stark an Avenger, and how is he also in New Avengers? Well, because the stories are not told in chronological order, it really helps out, right? Sometimes things take place in the past, sometimes they take place in the present, and then sometimes they take place in the near future, or the future yet to come. So, while it's a little bit confusing, once the whole story is told, holy crap, it becomes an amazing story. Now, both series, New Avengers was coming out monthly, and Avengers was coming out twice a month. That's why you're only going to see 12 issues of New Avengers, and then 23 issues of Avengers in the same book. Now, both of them are about to get closer together after issue number 11 or 12 of New Avengers, because there's a big crossover that happens. And this is called the Infinity. Now, does it have anything to do with the Infinity Gauntlet, or the Infinity Watch, or the Infinity Stones, the Infinity Gems, sorry. Dang it, I keep doing that because of the MCU. Yes, because I guess Thanos is in here, so it does have to do with that. This is the first time that we see these characters of the Black Order introduced in the comic book pages. And of course, the Black Order, not all of them, but most of them, were used in the movies. So, this is, like, for example, this is Proxima Midnight attacking Atlantis. You have the character of Ebony Maw go after Doctor Strange. You have the character up here of Corvus Glaive going after the X-Men. And this is, what is this guy's name? Black Dwarf, I think. And there's another character in here that plays a role with the Black Order that was introduced in the movies. So this is all about Thanos and the Black Order coming together. Now, there was something that was introduced in the pages of Avengers, not New Avengers, that kind of brings all of this together, these storylines together. So, the idea was introduced in the pages of Avengers of this race of beings, these ancient beings called the Builders. The Builders, a little bit of a retcon by Jonathan Hickman, but, I mean, it's comics, we see that all the time. The idea behind the Builders were that they're these ancient race that kind of started a lot of the Marvel Universe, and now they're on their way to Earth. And they're on their way to Earth not for good intentions. They're on their way to Earth to lay it waste. And along the way, they are destroying civilizations and empires. They don't care. So now it's up to the Avengers. We get a call from the Shi'ar Empire to head out to space to confront these approaching fleets that are coming to Earth before it reaches Earth. Iron Man decides to stay behind and prepare like a defense against this group of beings if the Avengers fail. So that's his purpose. Now, he has a real purpose because he's part of the Illuminati. And the New Avengers, what they're dealing with are the coming of Thanos and his Black Order. Because they're coming to Earth for a specific reason, which I won't get into because that's a little bit of a spoiler of what Infinity is all about, too. But That's how the two stories come together. You have the builders from Avengers, and you have the new Avengers, the Thanos storyline, coming together. Now, if you're expecting Avengers Infinity War type of storytelling, I will say that there are aspects of it that, of course, borrow from here. And Thanos is kind of in the background a lot through the storyline. But some of it, because of the way that Jonathan Hickman tells stories, is also left off panel. So you're not missing out on anything, I swear. It's just the way that he writes particular stories. But this is what the main idea behind the first omnibus is. And a lot of it is a lead up to what will become Secret Wars 2015. But I'll get into that when I talk about the second omnibus a little bit more. Now let's look at these extras. Now we're looking at the back matter. All the way in the back is where you're going to find the extras, the online comics. And then you're going to find the cover gallery back here. And this is the combined covers by Dustin Weaver, which they use part of it for the standard edition omnibus. And then you get the rest of the covers. Because much like all the other Jonathan Hickman books, there's no table of contents. You jump right into the story, and there are no covers. There's no chapter breaks. And I think, it's interesting to look at comments sometimes when people are like, did I miss something? Why are there no covers? I'm so confused. I like covers in between issues. Maybe it's just something I've gotten used to. And I like that idea because if I think of an epic story, for example, there's this amazing story that will be found in Volume 2 of this between Thor and Hyperion. I want to think back of the issue number, not the omnibus number or page number, which is something you're going to notice that there are no page numbers either. So if I want to go back to a particular story to tell people, oh yeah, I love that story in Avengers number 35 or whatever, it's hard to describe it when you're talking about an omnibus because all the covers are kept in the back. Now he does this is something of his choosing, to give you an experience. I remember reading an interview with him, to give you an experience that you're actually reading an event, a book, that there are no chapter breaks, that all these issues kind of intertwine with each other. Remember when I said New Avengers kind of becomes a bigger part of Avengers after issue 11 and 12, after Infinity especially, they kind of go hand in hand? That's the experience that he wants you to have. So all the covers are in the back. Now they're textless covers. You'll see who the artists are up there. And then you get the New Avengers covers back here. And like I mentioned, it's just, I think it's a personal taste thing for me. I've always liked the covers in between issues. I completely see where he's coming from, wanting people to have just a big reading experience and not be worried about what issue they're on. But as a comic book reader at heart before collected editions and graphic novels, I like the idea of being able to tell what issue I'm on. But that's just a decision that he made, and when I talked to him, he said that he does help out the collected editions department as far as like mapping out his stories. So the mapping of this is freaking excellent, right? You go from Avengers 1 through 6, the big story arc that introduces us to those characters in Mars, and then you get the storyline of the New Avengers, and then you jump back to Avengers to tell one whole story, and then jumping back to New Avengers, and then you get the Infinity. You really don't know when Infinity starts unless you know who the artist was, and what issue are you reading, New Avengers or are you reading Avengers? So if you're worried about that kind of stuff, I guess you can Google what part is what, because reading it like this definitely feels like you're reading one story, one big story, one epic story that goes from cover to cover. So the hell do I know? Maybe that is a better reading experience. Now, this is what I was talking about. I'm so glad that after all the extras, the issues are collected in the back that he wrote, like the Shang-Chi Master Kung Fu story, and then the Mojo World story featuring Sam and Roberto da Costa. Those are all in the way in the back, and that's what ends the book, and here's your end paper. Now we're going to look again at the binding in case you didn't see it at the beginning. Here's the binding of the new printer, printed at the iMac printer. So we're going to compare this to the original printing, so let's go back to the beginning with hopefully no spoilers, just a couple pages. Old printing, new printing. Let's go ahead and get these open. We have this white end paper there. Actually, let's pull this back so you can see. And Donnelly printer up at the top, and the iMac printer at the bottom. So since he uses a lot of white paper, throughout this right here, throughout the omnibus. You can tell right away that there is some bleed through here, more than up here, even though there are bleed through pages up there. The paper stock, just a little bit thinner, honestly, than the paper stock from the original printing. I mean, maybe a little more bleed through than up there. You can still see it says previously in Avengers. Same thing down here, previously in Avengers. You can tell there's 4 frames. You can tell there's caption boxes. There we go. You see there's letters right there, Avengers, Avengers. And let's actually look at just a couple more pages to compare the colors. Colors seem just a little bit more darker down here than up here. I actually like the way Ex Nihilo looks right there. That one kind of, it looks a little bit just duller than this one here. And I don't have the oversized hardcovers anymore, so I can't compare them to that. And I gave away the complete collections just recently to one of my random viewers. But again, word bubbles. Okay, we're going to go into the middle of the book to kind of give you an idea of how they both lay out. Okay, I'm halfway through the book, and I realize that Jonathan Hickman doesn't really do a lot of spread pages. He kind of writes a lot of splash pages, though, to give you that epic look, which I respect. But when I'm doing an overview about the middle of the book, there's just a couple that are kind of spoilerish, so this is kind of the way the book lays over toward the middle. You can tell there's a little bit more of a gutter loss right there, which isn't really a lot, but that's because of the eye down here, the binding, which as the more you stretch it, the bigger that eye will become, or the more you read it. It will not be as big as the Donnelly printer. I can almost guarantee you that. And that's just from my experience of rereading these books or letting somebody borrow them. And the eye is still smaller for the iMac printer than the Donnelly printer. Let's see if I can find something towards the back that isn't spoilerish. The pages I actually can compare in the back are the covers. I don't know why I didn't think of that. But here are the covers. Oh, and again, the paper, bleed through. A little more over here, but still bleed through over here. And the way the book lays over. So, kind of give you an idea. You get more of Black Widow's hand and Thor's left shoulder in this than even if you hold it down right here. So, I think that's a thorough enough comparison without going into spoilers. If ever you guys want me to do a real thorough review of what I think about this run, or what I think about these characters that show up, what I think about the story, let me know in the comments and I can do a longer type of video going really in deep with spoilers. Obviously, I really like talking about these things. But that's it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. That was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus, as well as the comparison to the original printing. If you're picking this up, let me know in the comments down below in case you missed out on the first printing. If you have the trade paperbacks, the oversized hardcovers, the complete collections, are you going that route instead of the omnibus route? If you've never read this story and you're going into it completely blind based on what some crazy guy on YouTube's telling you, or based on what your peers are telling you, or anybody in the comments that, hey, this is a great book, you should definitely read it, I would love to know all of that in the comments section. Everyone, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Check out our Patreon and check out our Spread Shop. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And more importantly, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love. Why did I snap my fingers like anybody can see that?